Monday evening to you. This is the January 6th edition of the map discussion. We're looking here at the jet stream, and you can kind of see it's broken over here across the Four Corners region. It picks back up off the Pacific coast, the west coast. This is where our next system is. This is analyzed about 12 hours ago, so this is a little bit has changed since then, but not too much. And you can see the East Coast storm that has brought some wintry precipitation and some severe weather across the Mid-South and Deep South is analyzed over the eastern parts of the United States. Going down to 500 millibar level, you can clearly see that East Coast storm now across the Deep South and into the Mid-Atlantic, while some the wind speeds pick back up off the coast of the Pacific. And then at 850 millibars, you see that low-level cyclone associated with the storm that brought the winter weather and severe weather across parts of the United States, with some enhanced flow across the coastal Carolinas regions. And then finally, the 500 millibar height falls. You can see where the lift is, the synoptic scale lift, mainly associated with that East Coast storm, and some height rises indicative of some sinking air across the southern plains and the mid and the central plains. So let's see how all of this evolves over the next several days using our multi-model ensemble. This is our multi-model ensemble. Again, this is a few runs of the GFS, the GEFS, and the ML machine learning GFS, which is the GraphCast GFS influence in here. So here you can clearly see the low level, the surface cyclone, the surface low pressure system with the accompanying upper level trough associated with that storm system. This was at 12 UTC or 7 a.m. This morning, January 6th. We pushed this day ahead. High pressure takes over the central parts of the United States, but the big story is this trough of low pressure in the mid-levels here. This is going to swing across the northern Mexico region, and when it does so, probably starting on the 9th, a surface response in the northwestern Gulf of Mexico can be seen by 7 a.m. January 9th. If we push this day one more, then a full-fledged surface low-pressure center south of New Orleans is forecast with a very sharp trough associated with that extends across the central parts of the United States into northern Mexico. Meanwhile, you have high pressure centered over the West Virginia, western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio region, somewhere in there. This is actually pretty important because you can see the thick black lines, which again is the 500 millibar level heights. There's a ridge over this high pressure center, which is indicative of that high pressure is being more or less protected in the sense that it's bringing down cool, dry air along the eastern seaboard. So if you have surface low across the northern Gulf with a high pressure centered under a ridge, then what this spells is some pretty interesting weather for the eastern parts of the United States. One more day ahead, January 11th at 7 a.m., the surface low is somewhere off the southeastern coast with that now weakened trough of low pressure in the mid-levels. So a couple of things. This might be like averaging. It might not be weak, but there's some spatial differences within the model runs and the different models that are used here. So it looks weak here, but there just might be some spatial differences that are kind of making things look weaker than it actually is. But a lot of information can be still obtained from these multi-model ensembles, in that there is going to be a trough of low pressure with an attendant low-level low-level cyclone with a high pressure centered over the eastern parts of the United States. In this is this pretty much spells some interesting weather. If you like snow, if you like wintry weather, this is probably going to be pretty interesting to you, especially across the southern plains into the mid-south and perhaps across the Carolinas. You know that this is a very progressive system because it kind of blows up off the coast of the United States, the eastern coast of the United States, after probably the 12th of January. So this is 7 a.m., the 12th of January. You have a little bit of a ridge and then another mean trough that kind of takes a similar evolution. It kind of broadens, and you got these little pieces of energy that you can kind of see in this particular model run. And then look, another surface low tries to develop in the northwestern Gulf of Mexico. And this is where my model ends. This is where I ended it. But yeah, so this is a very interesting setup. And probably an interesting period of time that we're entering in, getting into mid-January 2025, especially if you're interested in wintry types of precipitation across parts of the United States. So here is the temperatures and surface pressure and precipitation. Here is our storm system that brought some wintry weather across parts of the United States. If we push this forward, you can see high pressure builds in across the central plains. And then at the tail end of this, you can see already some precipitation and a surface low pressure center tries to develop, and eventually does, across the northern Gulf of Mexico. So here you can see this disturbance at the surface and very cold high pressure to the north. And this all spells an interesting signal in the models, especially across the Ohio River Valley, the Tennessee River Valley, and western parts of North and South Carolina, and into the Mid-Atlantic and possibly southern New England. Depending upon the exact track of this, we could be looking at a pretty substantial storm again for parts of the Mid-Atlantic and southeastern United States. So if we take a look at the European ensemble prediction system, the 2-meter 5-day average, you can see clearly where the majority of the precipitation, the wintry precipitation, fell, with the colder and purple shadings here indicative of some cooler than average air. But if we push this forward, going into the period between January 8th and January 13th, later on this week, you can still see some pretty cooler than average temperatures are holding on to the southern United States, southern plains, mid-south, and to the southeastern United States and mid-Atlantic especially. And getting into the 11th through the 16th, this, although modifying, it's still hanging on. This cold air is hanging on. And more interestingly, cooler air starts to build in the west between that period of January 16th through the 21st. So days 11 through 15, some cooler than average temperatures begin to build in the southern parts of Canada and northern parts of the United States, while still hanging on to cooler than average temperatures in the east. So it looks like the majority of the United States will be cooler than average in the period between January 16th and January 21st of this month, which, from our multi-model ensemble, it looks like we'll have another storm system develop if we're still cooler than average then this is why I say we're probably getting into a very interesting part of the wintry season here. So that about does it for this video. I'm sorry it's pretty fast, but the next storm system looks to be pretty interesting, especially if you live in the western parts of North and South Carolina and eastern Tennessee. But pretty much anybody from the southern plains through the mid-Mississippi River Valley and into the mid-Atlantic and parts of the Carolinas and southern New England need to be looking out for this particular storm. Yet again, some of the same areas that saw this last storm system bring some wintry precipitation, some of those areas might see it again later on this week into the weekend. But I will keep us up to date with the evolution of the models. And until then, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.